How you doing?
Great. Welcome to Kowalski Analysis. Glenn
Let's,
Lawrence.
let's do some analysis.
Yeah. Do you get the reference? Actually, before I ask you that question, let me go ahead and do a proper intro of
Yeah.
who you are. So, first off, everyone, thank you for tuning into episode 89 of Kowalski Analysis. I'm your host, Rob Kowalski. Before we dive in, do me a favor, drop a comment, say hi, and let us know that you are here, even if you're only here for a moment. If you're catching the replay, whether you're watching live, feel free to drop a comment, and it'll help more people see this and hear it. This is going to be an important conversation. Also, if you want to leave your location, that would be great too. We may be able to go back through and connect you with some people in your area to do life with. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. We're calling this episode Why Men Don't Want to Get Married. And Glenn Lawrence is my guest, and he's an actor. He's a podcast host and a podcast producer. He's a public speaker, a certified life coach, a social media influencer, as well as a former youth pastor and bodybuilding competitor, and an Air Force veteran. He also happens to be friends with guys like Rollo Tomasi and Justin Waller, and he is one of the few men of God who I've actually heard speak intelligently about applying red pill concepts in a way that is God-honoring to the walk of a Christian man. So,
thank you.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the show. I appreciate
that was
you
a
being
great
here.
intro. I need to copy that.
Yeah, you're a Renaissance man like myself. You do a lot of stuff, man. You got your hands in several different things.
Yeah, and it's not by my will, so to say. Like, I'm just grateful to be in the space, to be able to do the things that we do. It's God opened the doors, right? And since God opened the doors, I'm just walking through them.
Yeah,
I see you. I see you, Crypto Boogie. I see you in there.
I saw you on a podcast with the Iron Disciples. Actually, you know what? What I really want to show before we dive into this conversation is I want to find that clip of yours, the Matrix clip that you made, which I really enjoyed. I want everybody to see that.
That was the one that you reached out to me. You reached out to me after that one. Yeah.
I want to show that real quick. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was a short. All right. While I'm pulling that up, let's start off with I do like to do a little segment called This or That. And this is just a way before we get into like the deep stuff for everybody to get a chance to know who you are and just learn a little bit about your personality. So I'm going to fire 5 this or that questions to you in rapid succession, and you're just going to kind of answer them and let us know this or that. All right, here we go. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, morning workout or evening workout?
Midday workout.
Midday. Okay. Air Force days or youth ministry days?
Oh, you know what? Youth ministry days.
Okay. Podcast hosting or podcast producing?
Podcast producing.
All right. Military discipline or artistic freedom?
Oh, man. Military discipline.
All right. Never have sex again. This is my favorite, by the way. Never have sex again or eat the same meal for the rest of your life?
I'll eat the same meal for the rest of my life.
I think most men would say the same.
But see, the thing is, like I'm a competitor still by heart. Like, I still train as if I'm a competitor. I might actually compete in 2 years. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I've been on a meal plan forever. So, like, I'm used to eating the same thing every single day. So that to me is not a problem. You take sex away, we're gonna have problems.
Right. No, I hear you. So I did the Maryland back in gosh, what was that? 92, I think. It was 94 maybe. Anyway, I was 22 years old. I competed in a couple bodybuilding shows that year. I got 5th place in the Maryland. But it was enough for me to know that I wasn't going to go pro, which was a good thing because I think I had some delusions of grandeur at the time. Thought I was going to be a competitor, like a professional bodybuilder or something. Well, what about you?
I'm grateful to work out with like the guys at the gym that I go to. Like, so Hide Yamasaki is the IBBF world bodybuilding champion in Masters, right? And he's getting ready to do the Olympia in a week. And I just did a show. I produced the show for him and Rolo when they did a show together. And like I'm surrounded by competitors. And it's just like when you're surrounded by like guys that are doing greatness, right? You want to do greatness.
Right.
And after my injuries, like I got a motorcycle accident that kind of like made me like step away from the stage and step away from competing, thinking I couldn't do it anymore. Being around these guys are like, no, you could do it. And me and Hide were talking. He's like, I want to see you do it in 2 years, you know? And I'm just like, okay, let's go for it. Let's just give it a try. Let's see what happens. So it's like when you surround yourself with greatness, you could only be great. You can't, they won't let mediocrity be around them. So,
right. That whole, you know, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with thing is real.
Yep.
You know, like you're either going to stop hanging out with guys that are doing a lot better than you, or you're going to level up. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. You're either going to get left behind or you're going to level up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cool thing about bodybuilding too is like I learned so much about my body because I thought I knew, like I would eat General Tso's chicken sometimes and think it was healthy because it was chicken, you know, like,
yeah.
And then you start learning about like sugar and high glycemic and low glycemic carbs, and you really learn a lot. For me, it's been great because I've just been able to loosely apply everything that I learned to my life and stay lean, you know, pretty much my whole life. So it was really beneficial. I think it's almost like doing like 75 hard or something. Yeah.
And like for me, like I took everything that I learned from bodybuilding and applied it to every other area of my life. Right.
Yeah.
It was after my first competition that I decided to go back to college and get my degree in theology.
Oh, wow.
Because the discipline, the military bearing, and then plus the discipline from competing, I realized that there was nothing that I could not achieve if I really wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to college. Let's do this thing. And I did it. And, you know, the rest is history. So it's like something about physical fitness. And I think what it does is it gives you a tangible goal, and it's a goal that you could see and achieve and you could, you know, feel good about. And then when you just apply that discipline to other areas in your life, you're going to start seeing that goal become a reality and becoming something achievable.
Yeah. It's kind of like that David Goggins thing, you know, do something that you hate every day almost.
Yeah.
But I pulled up the video. I really want to show everybody this video because I thought it was great, and it really give everybody a glimpse into your personality and you know, what's important to you. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Here it is.
Let me help you out.
Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay.
18-year-old Christian dude that's watching this video. Let me help you out. I know this world is bright and right in front of you, right? And you don't know what you're going to do. You either want to chase girls or chase this or chase that, try to buy a Bugatti, whatever the case is. Let me give you a couple pointers and advice. Number one, the first and utmost and most important thing that you should be focusing on is your walk with God. Number one. Right. Number two, develop frame. Rollo Tomassi writes in his 9 iron rules. It's the first iron rule that says frame is everything. You need to develop your own frame. Number three, make money. Okay, find a career. Start a trade. Do something that provides you enough income that you can live the life that you want, whether with woman or without a woman. But you need to have enough resources coming in so that you can either provide the lifestyle that you want or provide the lifestyle that you want with a wife and kids. All right. Number 4, stay and maintain physical health. Good physical health. Okay, look, we all know the scripture says the body is our temple, right? Our body is God's temple. How are you being a good steward with what you are given? So before you could worry about, oh, you need to get a girlfriend or get a wife and get kids, are you a good steward with the body you already have responsibility for? If the answer is no, then you have no business getting a relationship. You can't even take care of what you got right now. All right, so maintain good physical shape and health. All right. And lastly, number 5, learn social skills. All right, we're calling it game, whatever. But learn social skills. Learn how to communicate and talk to people. Go be around people. Learn social skills. All right, learn these things before you even think about complicating your life with adding a woman into it. Because if right now, if you rush to get married, rush to get in a relationship, and then you get a girl pregnant, now you married her, now you got a kid, whether you didn't marry her or not, you still got a kid, and you don't have a job, you don't have frame, you don't have that walk with God, man, that's going to test your faith, and you're going to be like, why did I do this to myself? So again, walk with God, frame, money, fitness, social skills. Learn those things. Develop those things. Get good at those things before you even think about complicating your life with a woman. That's all I gotta say.
Dude, I love that. I mean, I was like, when I saw it, I was like, I asked Iron Disciples, that's where I saw it on their channel. I was like, can I cut this and repost it? And they're like, yeah, man, we'll introduce you to the guy, Glenn, that made it. I was like, dude, it's
just funny.
So
me and Mike like talk every day. Like me and Mike from Iron Disciples, we talk every day, you know, and it could be like, sometimes it's like a half hour, sometimes it's like an hour and a half, you know, we just find time to communicate and fellowship every day, you know, and it's important for me, and it's also important for him to do that. And I don't think a lot of guys understand the importance of strong Christian male fellowship, you know, and how important that is. Like, you know, your walk with God is great and is important, is the most important.
Yeah.
But who you connect yourself with and who you fellowship with and who do you maintain a circle with is equally important.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of they're going to help support you in your journey with God. They're going to let you know, hey, man, you may be going too far, or you know what, hey, you may need to go a little further, you know, like, and if what guys tend to do, we tend to isolate ourselves, and when we do that, we kind of lose that sharpening iron process, and then we have a dull blade, and we're not ready for war,
right?
You know, so it's critical. Those guys are awesome, and I saw that video you guys did with them, and it was a great video.
The episode.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I kind of threw him for a loop when I started talking about polygyny, but it was a good conversation, man. I enjoyed it. I really respect those guys. I mean, they're good looking jack guys. One guy's a virgin, the other guy.
Yeah, Mike, that's my buddy. I always make virgin jokes with him too. It's funny.
I mean, you know, handsome, good looking man. You know, like that's real man, big boy shit right there. So I respect that a lot. Yeah. But I saw your episode with them too, and you were saying a lot of things in there that really resonated with me about, well, we're going to get into some of it. You know, one of the things I heard you talking about was, you know, the marriage and why are we getting the government involved and some of the things that I've thought. And so, yeah, I think it's really, you have some really great things to say. And I think people that watch this are going to be really enlightened. And of course, you got the Godfather, Rollo Tomasi, as a close friend. So, you know, you get to, you're right there, like right close to almost to the source of all this great information. So
yeah, I'm blessed to be in the position that I'm in. You know, God opens doors and he closes doors. So I'm just blessed to be in the position that I'm in for the time being until God, you know, closes the door and has me go in another direction. You know, I take as much, you know, every day is a blessing to be in this space and to be within this proximity to, like you said, the source of this information. And, you know, me and Rollo have many conversations about faith and, you know, sexual dynamics and, you know, the problems with, you know, where we're at. And it's like, man, I'm sparring in a sense with my ideas with the master, you know, and he helps refine a lot of my ideas. Sometimes I give him good ideas, you know, and it's crazy that, you know, to know that. And it's a great season in my life to be in where I'm at right now.
Yeah, man. Well, I just to kind of preface this conversation, I wanted to, you know, share what basically the marriage numbers are, which, and you may be able to confirm this, but
Yeah.
five out of every 1,000 people are getting married per year right now. It's the lowest that the marriage rates have ever been since they started keeping record of it. And we're going to kind of talk about some of the reasons why that might be, and what hopefully, you know, you or we as a society can do about those things. Can you give people just like a quick background into your history as a former pastor and expert in traditional masculinity?
Yeah. So I never was red pilled from the beginning. I would you consider like a blue pilled alpha, right? I kind of had that happy wife, happy life narrative. Um, I went through a horrible divorce, and that kind of red pilled me, being ostracized from the church, being asked to step down from ministry, really just red pilled me, right? And I was looking for help in the church community, but they were all telling me the same thing. And I'm like, this is not right, you know? And it wasn't until I found Rollo's work that it kind of clicked for me, right? And so I would never say that like I lacked masculinity. I always had masculinity, but it was always in the frame of a, you know, happy wife, happy life. And what happened was like the red pill kind of got me diving deeper into my studies in the word, you know, into the Bible, because I kept on like seeing things and I'm like, okay, is this biblical? Is this biblical? You know? And I was like, wait a minute. The church is not being biblical in their doctrine. And then like, cause I was taught the servant leader model. And then I'm like, okay, this is going against what I've been taught in servant leader. But then as I dive into it, I'm like, wait a minute, servant leader is not even biblical. You know, it's from a guy that didn't even believe in God named Robert Greenleaf. That's the model. And then the church just put a fish logo on it and said, oh, we're making it Christian kosher now. And that's what they ran with since like the 70s. I'm like, what's going on here? So then I've been on this journey of like trying to understand the way that God wanted, you know, families to be, and what a man's role is, and what is a man, you know, character, and how is a man supposed to be, and what is a woman supposed to be, and these expectations that God has for men and women. And nowhere in there does it ever say, man, default to your wife.
Right.
Nowhere in there does it say, thou shalt make thy wife happy. You know, it says to love her.
Yeah.
Doesn't say she's going to be happy when you love her. It just says to love her. And then it tells wives to submit and respect their husbands, right? And then you read through Proverbs and you see all these warnings of bad women. You know, stay away from this woman, stay away from this woman. There's dead man's bones in this woman's house, you know, like stay away from them. And I'm like, why isn't this being taught at church? Why have I never heard a pastor ever say, you know what, stay away from women like this because they have dead man's bones in their house, right? And it really just kind of pushed this motive. And I said this to the Iron Disciples the other day. I was like, you know, bro, I was like, I don't ever consider myself ever walking back into a ministry in a church. But I said, what we're doing here in the red pill space and in the Christian space is that this is a ministry.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
This is a men's ministry. Do you remember back in the 90s when they had Promise Keepers?
Of course.
Right. And then do you remember like oh, I love these guys. They were what were they called? They were like these big bodybuilders that would rip Bibles and just bench press ridiculous weight on the pulpit, right? Yeah. Like
My buddy came to the Lord at one of those things. He was an inner city kid raised in the projects, Rob Carr, if you're watching. And he went,
Nice.
he looked up to these big burly guys. They ripped telephone books in half, and he went to the church to see it. He ended up giving his heart to the Lord.
And I'm like, oh, power team. That was what they were called, a power team. And I'm just like, what happened to that version of Christian masculinity?
Right.
Why did we get this weak, sissified version of masculinity?
Right.
Where did it turn from? And I started diving into that, and I started realizing that the church has been infiltrated by feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been on this journey of, taking what I like to say is like, I put the red pill lens on, but I have a biblical worldview, right? So I don't see things the way that the average Christian sees things, because they have a blue pilled or unplugged worldview.
Yeah.
But I look at things from a very red pill lens. I have a biblical worldview. So like, I'm not Myron. I'm not going to tell you that you need to go bang 50 chicks.
Right.
Right. But I will tell you to spin plates. But I will say you don't have to have sex with any plate.
100%.
You just want to get experience with women. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience doesn't have to be sexually.
Right. You should not sleep with them, but I love that idea, because it's when you know that you have options, you carry yourself in a different way. Women need to sense that you're fearless, that you're not afraid to lose them. I want you, but I don't necessarily need you.
Exactly. And what happens is guys get boggled down in relationships where they pedestalize their wife,
mm-hmm.
and to the point where, and they're like, I can't have anybody else but you, or you're my peace, you're my everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's idolatry. What you're doing. God is your peace. You shouldn't be able to live without God. Like that's the reality. If she leaves, that should not change your walk with God. Like, you're putting her to the position of like she is this deity when she's not. But I can't blame them, because the church has pedestalized women to that degree.
Yeah. And if you look at the fact that most women are the ones that are the ones that file for divorce are women, the majority. I think what happens is that when you do that, it sets you up for failure down the road, because the women don't want to be in that position. They're not supposed to be. There's a hierarchy. Men are supposed to love their wives as Christ loved the church. But like you said, that respect, women are supposed to return it with respect. But if you let a woman wear the pants in a relationship, which she will try to do almost always, I've found,
it's biblical. It says so in Genesis.
It's the curse. Yeah, it's part of the curse. But if you let her, she'll resent you for it deep down, and she'll end up leaving you for someone more masculine. That's what'll happen. And Rollo talks about this, a shit test, right?
Yeah.
So, well, cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Let me add one more thing real quick to that. Is that, what I tend to do is I end up sparring with both Christians and Red Pill. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm close enough to Rollo to where like I don't get a whole lot of flack for what I say. But there's still a lot of Red Pill content creators that don't like me, because I will say things that are biblical that go against, their ideas, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And there's things that I say to Christians about Red Pill that piss them off. I'm actually debating Ruslan, who's a Christian rapper, next month. And I'll be debating him about a lot of these things that we differ from. And I've talked to him out on like on Twitter and stuff. We have we correspond in the messages on Twitter, and he seems like a nice guy. We just have a very differing understanding of what the Bible says, and what is good for men and women. And it's the thing is, it's not hinging upon your salvation. Anything that I'm saying doesn't take away your salvation. And anything that he's saying doesn't take away your salvation. But the thing is, it does ask the question, what is the ordained God way of doing things? Because everybody thinks when they're like, oh, you got to love your wife, like Christ loved the church. What did Christ do? Oh, he died for the church. But he also made a whip.
Yeah, the Lord disciplines those he loves, and chastens everyone he accepts as a son. So if he loves you, there's discipline involved.
What did he say in Revelations? What did the Son of Man say in Revelations to the churches? He said, I'm cutting one of you're off. I'm done with you. That's discipline.
Right.
Right. So this idea of Christ's love as this, like, it's a safe guide mentality, right? It's like, oh, he's safe. He's going to forgive me for everything. That doesn't mean you're not going to get disciplined, right? You remember the movie The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Yeah.
And they asked about Aslan, the
Mhm.
lion. They're like, is he safe? Like, no, he's a lion, but he's good. You know, and I think that's where men need to like understand that's where we should be, is we should be a good guy, never the safe guy.
It's good. Reminds me of the Jordan Peterson quote about being a monster but control it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, let's give a shout out to a few people that are watching that commented. Thank you for that. Siege D. He says Crypto Boogie says he arm wrestled you and you're a tough guy to beat.
You know, so I've had the pleasure of meeting Crypto Boogie. He came out to Vegas for Cultivate Crypto's conference and our Crypto Mindsets conference, and he's a strong believer, good guy. You know, I chat with him every once in a while. He messages me. He's a great guy.
That's cool. Kevin Hawthorne, I saw your comment in Lakeland, Florida. Online Money says Jim doesn't lie. If you can't pick up weights, you can't. Let's see who else is on here. Appreciate that super chat, CHD. Thank you for that. Fitness, finance, frame, and faith. Those are the 4 F's right there. One thing I really appreciated about you, Glenn, man, was that, like what you're saying, it's rare to hear somebody discuss the red pill stuff because usually guys like Ruslan will just dismiss it. But you said it from a Christian perspective, like you said, you filter it through a Christian lens. And the fact that even that in that Matrix video that we just watched, you said the first and most important thing is get close to God. You know, then that really is it. You had an exact order, and then frame a second. I really think even more important than being in great physical shape, you got to get that frame down. You have to. Women love confidence, and if you're not carrying it, even if it doesn't matter how much money you got or how good you look, you're gonna not make out in the end if you don't have frame. So I think you nailed it. You just hit it right in perfect order. Yeah,
I think and I don't think that when people listen to that, I don't want them to think that like, you know, you should, you know, only do those things in those orders. No, you need to do all those things simultaneously.
Yeah.
Those are all things that are important. Your walk with God is important. You working on your frame is important. And the great thing about your walk with God and your frame, they kind of coincide. You know, once you get closer to God, you actually know your frame better.
You know your identity.
Exactly. And then you know what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow in your life.
100%.
You know? So it's like a lot of these things kind of like combined together. And then once you have your frame right, you know what kind of career you want to have, you know?
Yeah.
And then it kind of just all kind of falls in place. It's not like, oh, I got to just, for the next 5 years, I'm working on my walk with God. And then, you know what, that 5 years later, I'll work on my frame. No, you have to do it all at the same time. It's something you got to constantly focus on.
Looks like we got another super chat here. We're going to just open it up before we dive into the conversation. And this is from CHD. Thanks again. He said, hey, Glenn, should I read Alpha God and RM Religion, Red Pill Religion, before I reread the Bible in its entirety?
No, reread the Bible. You need to have a solid. Now, I read Rational Religion. Actually, I told Rollo I critiqued it, and I did critique it. I have read Alpha God, parts of Alpha God. Here's the thing. Regardless of what Rollo writes, the Bible is going to be more correct than Rollo.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of what, you know, I think it's, I forgot who wrote Alpha God. But regardless of what he writes, you know, the Bible is still more correct than what they write. So at the end of the day, your foundation, you need to be strong in your foundation with the Bible before you even read anything else about religion.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. Filter everything through that. Because I just listened to Rational Male. I haven't done the Rational Religion yet. And there were definitely things I disagreed with in there, but there was so much wisdom in there too. So yeah, know the word first and foremost. I mean, you know, as smart as Rollo is, God's infinite intelligence. So it'd be pretty hard to compete with that. But let's just really quick go over some of the main, maybe top 3 to 5 reasons like why men aren't marrying anymore. I think I have a pretty good idea of what they are, but what would you say they are?
Main reasons why guys don't want to get married.
Yeah.
One, what does it benefit them today? Unless you want kids, right? Marriage doesn't benefit men today.
Because of the sexual revolution, and it's so easy to go out. And I think
it's not just the sexual revolution. It's also just the way that feminism has infiltrated, our culture to the degree that it is. Our court systems are, literally designed against men.
Yeah.
So it's a losing bet. With the other party getting the incentive to leave you and get financial gain from it.
Yeah.
So it's not an equal, risk for either one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one risk for one group of people, and the other party gets the reward. So it's not an equal risk. Two, you showed the marriage rate, but you also know the divorce rate's down. And this is what I love. Like when Matt Walsh says like, oh, the divorce rate's going down. I'm like, yeah, Matt, because nobody's getting married. Of course, the divorce rate's going to drop when there's, the marriage rate is declining. We have these 20th century ideas of what men and women are supposed to be, but we live in the 21st century. Women don't need men financially anymore. They could get their own bag. We see them sell their butt pictures on OnlyFans. They're making a living without you. So women don't need you. They want you, right? Well, when you decide you no longer want something, you're going to discard their authority, right? So it's like, men are not needed, as Rollo says, superfluous. Men are become superfluous in today's society. So the only need for a man is procreation. Well, then if you just need them from one thing, then there's no value there. Right. So men are coming to the point where it's just like, this is way too much of a risk than it is a reward.
Right.
And we see homosexuals, they adopt kids, or they get surrogates to have kids. And I've even had guys say, you know what, I'm better off just finding a baby mama or somebody to have a surrogate kid with, and get my kid from them that way. That way I don't have to put up with the wife aspect of things. And it's sad to where that's where guys are. But the other problem is you have women have become so masculine and to the point where Genesis 3:16 is like in full effect. The desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you, is in full effect. We see women, not even if you just take out marriage, but you just look at men and women, we see women trying to control men in every area of life. And so that's confrontatious. That's not going to be realistic, and that's not going to work in a godly marriage. So, this idea that, marriage, and I agree that God created marriage to be a physical relationship to see between man and woman, and his promise with, Jesus and the church. But when have you ever heard the church tell the husband that Christ, no? No, Christ, I'm not going to listen to you.
Right.
You are not being the leader that I want you to be. No, I'm not going to submit. Like, I am not going to respect you. When did the church get to say that?
Right. Never.
But we allow women to do that. So it's like, we see this, it's coming to the point for men. It's like, as Paul says, it's better for you to stay single. Better
to live on the corner of the roof than being.
Paul writes in Corinthians, hey, it's better for you to stay single. But if you can't withhold sexual temptation, get married. But, for guys, it's like, especially when they get older and they kind of go through that young, age, and they're just kind of, getting with women and stuff like that. Like, I know guys in their 50s and 60s that are just refusing to get with women, period. They're not gay. They're just like, you know what? Too much of a problem.
MGTOW, right?
Yeah. And I don't necessarily have a problem with them going MGTOW.
If anybody don't know, men going their own way, if anybody doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them saying that when they're saying, I don't want to put in the work anymore to deal with them. He's like, I'm not stopping for me leveling up, but it's like their behavior is not worth ruining my peace.
It's really, yeah. I mean, how could someone actually go their own way? Like, what they're going to jerk off? They're going to get like a little sex bot robot, or I mean, what are they really? I could. It may be easier to be single, but what are you going to do with that sexual energy, especially if you're a Christian? Because, like, I think everything you said is true. Specifically, it's so easy to get laid. That removes a lot of incentive because sex isn't really that carrot on hanging in front of men anymore. Because if anything, we can go out and find it. Actually, you know what? This is a great segue. I want to show you this clip here that I thought was really interesting. It's a pastor. You may know who he is, but let me pull this up real quick. Here we go. Let me know if you can.
Oh, Tate. Pastor Tate.
I had a girl. She was my main girl. I'm sleeping with all these other girls, and she didn't care what I did. She didn't care if I had a threesome. This girl, her best friend. She didn't care about none of it. She hated if I actually physically slept next to another girl. You can bang anything, you can jizz anywhere, but please can you sleep next to me? And what she was doing is she was changing her mind, so she had a new way to determine her status as opposed to sexual exclusivity, right? And if you can find something, if you can show them something so they can look in their mind and say, well, I know I'm the one because I get this.
Sexual exclusivity is one of the ways that we judge the character of a guy today. We are approaching a time in which, when it comes to this, women are becoming more powerless. I don't know if sexual exclusivity is going to be something that they will be able to continue to demand in monogamy. We're asking people to go from 40 flavors of milkshake to 1. But the minute you commit to this relationship, you can only have 1 flavor from now on. If we're going to redefine what male roles are and redefine what female roles are, then we may have to be prepared to redefine what the acceptable behavior is within exclusive relationships.
I love that clip because he's a pastor, but he's just like keeping it real. And I'm not condoning, going out and sleeping with women outside of marriage, because I think the Bible is very clear about fornication and there's serious consequences for that. But I think he's right in saying, like, it's unrealistic where we're at as like in the dating culture to expect men to all of a sudden something's going to change and all these men are going to be willing to sign up to get married, especially after all these women have been whoring around, giving it out to anybody, and then you want this guy to buy it after you've been giving it away for free, and you're not in submission, you're hard to deal with. Like, there's so many, and on top of that, a 56% divorce rate. So when it doesn't work out, he gets half of his shit taken by you. Like, so what's the incentive for men right now? And this is why I've said, even in one of my previous videos, is you have to find a way to make marriage more attractive to men, because obviously they're not finding it attractive right now.
Well, they're ruining marriage for men. Like, I'm going to read you a couple quotes here from, and I posted this on Twitter like a week ago, right? These are pastors that have said things like this. Actually, we need to find it.
I saw that Chandler clip that you guys.
I can't. It's funny. The funny thing about Matt Chandler is he says that, but then he had to step down from his role in leadership because he had an inappropriate relationship with a woman.
Oh, Lord.
So it's like, whatever, Matt. But here's one. A bigger and even leap, an even bigger leap was required to understand that it took us an equal degree of submission for men to submit to their gender roles. They are called to be servant leaders. In our world, we are accustomed to seeing perks and privileges occur to those who have higher status, but in the dance of the Trinity, the greatest is the one who is the most self-effacing, most sacrificial, most devoted to the good of others. Jesus redefined all authority as servant authority. Any exercise of power could only be done in the service of others, not to please oneself. Well, that's what they're saying marriage is. Dr. James Dobson also said, from the founder of Focus on the Family, says when a man gets married, he stops living for his own ambitions, instead channels his energy into supporting his family. He discovers a sense of pride, yes, masculine pride, because he is needed by his wife and family. Not needed not only for protection and provisional, but for love and affection. And then a husband's leadership is a special accountability for sabotaging his own wants and appetites and forward looking for a planned best interest of his wife and children. Headship is not about having one's laundry done. No, it's not about, having your meals cooked. It's not even about having one's sexual drives met, but rather a constant evaluating on how to step up first and lay one's life down for one's family. That sounds like slavery to me.
Right? Sign me up. That's what I want.
The Christian community right now is making marriage more unattractive than the hoes in the street.
Right.
Like, it's like at least the hoes in the street will let you still go after what you want to go after in life.
Right.
But no. Once you're married in the church, it's like, no, you got to give up all that. You got to give up all that desire, all that ambition. No, how dare you? You've been working 12 hours all day long. You come home. Why the hell do you think you get to have a meal ready for you? Who do you think you are? Wait a minute. You expect the woman that you take care of to want to have sex with you? Where do you get off with that high horse? Oh, just because you work all day?
Right.
Or you expect to have clean clothes so you could go to work? I ain't your mother.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? It's like and then they're saying, so there's no expectations to have for your wife. That, you know what? Instead of having these expectations, you need to think about how you are to be a better servant for her. How can you? That is the most unattractive thing that you could. The reason why men don't want to get married is because they're literally telling men you should want to be a slave. Right. And if you don't want to be a slave, you're not a real man. And it's like, wait a minute, then call me not a real man, because I wouldn't want to be a real man.
Right. I mean, people wonder why there's so many women in the church and there's not that many men by comparison. The church has been completely feminized. And I could say even at my old home church, it was the same way. It was a lot of women. There was women pastors. The pastor's wife had a very strong personality. Some might say even more strong than the pastor himself. And I could sense something didn't feel right to me, but I didn't know exactly what it was because nobody talks about it. So
nobody talks about it. Anytime we talk about sexual sin, it's always in the masculine in the church. It's always done from a masculine point of view.
Right.
And you know what? It's very true. Men could be sexually immoral. Men could do very abusive things to women, but women could do it too. Actually, it says so in Proverbs,
Some might even say that the Bible says it's more abhorrent when a woman does it too.
Well, think about this. It's like, and I'm not saying that men shouldn't remain pure.
Right.
Like I pride my good friend, Mike from Iron Disciples, for being a 30-year-old virgin. And it's not because he's a 30-year-old virgin because he is unattractive and fat and an incel. Yeah. No, he's a 30-year-old virgin because he has not found a woman worthy of his. I tell everybody this. Mike hasn't found a woman that's worthy of his dick.
Yeah.
Look, ho, you're not worthy of my dick or the things that come out of it.
You're not worthy of my one and only golden ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the reason there's Mike. I see you.
Mike's here.
Never mind. That's CHD that put his mic over. Yeah. Okay. And it's like, he's saying you're not worthy of my dick. And I don't think guys have enough like pride in their reproductive system
Yeah.
to say that, you know what, like every woman that you run the risk of having sex with, you know, is potentially going to provide you an offspring. And I go, the way I look at it, it goes, you're not worthy of my legacy. You are not worthy to bring in my legacy. And that's how guys need to look at it. And they need to start vetting women through this lens, because it says, you know, in it says, and this is Proverbs 7 verse 24. And now, O son, listen to me. Be attentive to the words of my mouth. Don't let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many victims has she laid down, and all her slain are mighty. Her house is the way of slough, going down to the chambers of death. Why would God put that in the Bible? Why would God want that in the Bible if he did not really say, hey, women are bad too? It's not just men, but women are deceitful, and they will use their sexual charms to manipulate you, to get you in a position where you are destroyed. And it's like, but we always hear about, like, you know, men sins, men lusting. Okay, yeah, men struggle with lust. Well, women, stop giving men a reason to lust. Stop showing your butthole on Instagram. We wouldn't lust, you know, we would have less reasons to lust.
For real. You know, I didn't actually read the book Sex and Culture, but I was talking to somebody about it the other day. Fascinating book by a guy. I don't believe he's a Christian or anything, but he did this study of sex and culture, and every society that fell in history 100% of the time was preceded by one thing. What do you think that was?
Sex.
Well, it was making women the political and social equals of men. 100% of the time. As soon as they have the rights, like certain rights, then they start leaving their husbands. You start getting promiscuity. You start getting fatherless homes. Fatherless homes leads to a society collapsing because of all the, you know, kids growing up. They're 10 times more likely to have all the bad things happen to them. So and the guy didn't say we should take rights away from women. But he couldn't deny that was the root cause of it. Is as soon as you make women and I'm not saying that women shouldn't vote or anything. Don't misquote me. I'm just saying from history what they found. And if you think about it, women are carrying eggs. You know, those eggs get fertilized, and if they're not, as soon as they loosen up on their sexual access, now you're going to have bad things happen in the future. And I think I don't even want to say we're at the beginning stages of that now in America. We're probably pretty far along because of the sexual revolution was 50 years ago or plus.
70 years ago now, isn't it?
60s, I think maybe. So yeah, 60 years ago. But
you gotta look at it like this. Ever since the pill, a woman's vagina has been devalued.
Yeah. There's no fear.
There's no, like, we can't tell. Have you ever been able to tell, like, oh, she hasn't had a lot of partners, I could feel it? No. Like, you can't tell whether or not a woman physically has had children unless, like, you can see stretch marks or something like that, right? But other than that, you can't tell. So you can't tell a woman's sexual past. This is where I say body count doesn't matter, because you'll never know.
Yeah. Well, it does matter if you did know. I mean, the real body count.
It does matter. And it does ultimately matter, but it doesn't matter if you in the retrospect of, like, as long as you got to watch her behavior, because whatever number she tells you,
it's fine.
Maybe a lie. Maybe a lie. So just assume that whatever she tells you, you multiply it by 5, and then, you know, you divide it by 1. I don't know.
Well, most have the one hand rule. They always like, it's 5 guys. You know, that's what they'll say.
Yeah.
Usually they're not counting the one night stands or the thing they had on vacation or whatever. But body count matters. Women hate to hear it more for women more than men because of the way that they're wired biologically. You know, it's proven that women with more than 10 partners have the highest divorce rates. And then, so there's a pair bonding issue there. Number one. Number two, it's just more trauma that they go through, where men can have sex unemotionally a lot easier, which is not to condone fornication, because both Glenn nor I believe that you should do that. It's a serious sin to sleep with someone outside of marriage, and that's not what we're saying. But the consequences are different for men and women, whether you like it or not.
Well, I think the consequences are different, but also the call is different. Remember, the bride of Christ is supposed to be pure.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be blameless, right?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
When you look at that, it's like, hey, women, if you are, what is a Proverbs 31 woman? Is she a converted, hoe, and then she found Jesus? No, that's not a Proverbs 31 woman. Titus 2 also talks about, the qualities of a woman. And it says that, and this is where I think we have a problem with marriage, right? Why guys not getting married anymore or wanting to get married anymore is because you don't got older women teach your younger women how to love their husband and their children, not to be too much of wine, not to be busy in the home. We don't hear that from older women. We don't hear you need to please your man. You need to submit to your man. You need to serve your man. Mm-hmm. We hear, get the bag, girl. Do you, boo-boo, That's what we hear.
Yeah. And
it's like, where women are supposed to learn how to be good wives from if their older women are not teaching them how to be good wives.
Right. Yeah. So this is one thing I'll push back on too, is like when women say, well, a woman doesn't want a man that's slept around a lot either. And I'm like, I hear you on that. And you have every right to choose what kind of man that you marry. But the difference is this: women are the sexual gatekeepers. They're the ones that say when we have sex for the first time, almost all of the time, 99.9% of the time, the woman's going to say when we have sex for the first time.
Well, yeah, outside of that is great.
Right. Yeah. Now, but the men are the security gatekeepers or the commitment gatekeepers. This is why we are the ones to propose. So I tell women, imagine if you were dating a man and you fell in love, he proposed, and then you found out that he proposed to every woman that he dated before you. That's the equivalent, right? Because he was basically the thing that he had control over, that commitment, that security. He was just trying to provide it, give it to anybody that'll take it. Like that's what men, when you go out and you sleep with all these different men, that is what it feels like to us. Is like you had no, what the Bible says, no discretion. A beautiful woman without discretion is like a gold ring and a pig snout. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say that about men, right? Because men, every woman in the world can be promiscuous. Every woman. Yeah. Not only a small percentage of men can be promiscuous. They actually have to achieve some level of status usually in order to do it. Not to say that it's right, but that is the way that it is. So that's why men will look at a woman or not just men, people will look at a woman that has slept around as a hoe, but a man will be looked at as a stud.
Yeah. Well, it's also like this, and Myron says this, it's like, a woman is given like $1 million when she turns 18 and she's legally allowed to have sex, right? She has given $1 million. Right. Just because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And every guy she sleeps with, it's like giving $200,000 away.
It's great.
So then, you know what? Let's say I have to earn my wealth. As a man, I have to earn my status. I have to earn my right to I have to earn my wealth, right? So once I get to the point where I have the wealth and I have options to buy, why would I buy you? Yeah. Why would I want to invest my resources in you? Yeah. If you have 20 bodies at 200,000 a pop, right? What do you have by the time I meet you?
Right. You're in debt.
It's nothing. It's not worth anything.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we're clear on this because there's some women I'm sure that are watching this. Is we're not devaluing women. If anything, we're trying to tell you know your worth, because it is worth something. I almost looked at myself. People would say, "Oh, you didn't value women when you were a man whore." I'm like, no, I would almost say I valued them more because I knew what they were giving away was valuable, and I was just greedy because I was taking as much as I could of it because I knew it was valuable.
It's like Pokemon. You got to catch them all. And in that mindset, it's like the way I looked at it is like when I was a man whore, it's like, or in those, I never was a man whore, but like I say, in those days of promiscuity, it wasn't like I didn't value women. Really, I don't think I go back to, I didn't value myself.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, whoever I sleep with, I potentially give them a legacy. And it's like, I'm not giving up my legacy to anybody
Yeah.
that's not worthy of my legacy anymore. Like that's you don't get to say that you brought in the heir of Glenn Lawrence.
Right.
You know, that's a high honor.
Sure.
That's a privilege. And guys don't have that mindset. We put the vagina as the privilege. And I'm like, no. This is the privilege. You know, like you may be the gatekeepers of sex, but I'm the gatekeepers of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you only get this. This is the perk from the relationship.
Yeah.
You know?
That's
And
right.
guys don't have that mindset. They're like, oh, I gotta convince the girl. No, the Bible says man wasn't created for women, but women created for men.
Yeah.
So why do I need to constantly prove myself to someone that was created as my helpmate?
Right.
My helpmate needs to prove themselves worthy to be my helpmate.
Yeah.
Right? It's a mindset thing, but we have been indoctrinated to think that the servant leadership model is the way to go, and that not saying that guys don't have to be valuable or prove themselves worthy to the woman, right? Not saying that. They have to prove themselves to be a good person. Absolutely. Right? But at the same time, again, when did it become that the thing that women were created for was a man to be their helpmate? When did the creation have to be, you know, prove themselves worthy for the thing that was created for them?
Yeah. I think with you though, you know your purpose. You're putting a dent in the universe, right? So you're able to carry yourself that. I think with a lot of guys, they, you know, I'm a firm believer in purpose before person. I think that's the way God designed it. Adam and Eve, going all the way back, you know, Adam got a job. He didn't get Eve. Eve came along later. You need to figure out what you're here for. And you even talk about that Matrix video is like, make money, right? Like go out and find your purpose, because that's super attractive to a woman when you are after your vision, your mission, you know, for your life, then you can have that frame. But if you don't know, like, it's hard to carry yourself with that level of respect if you're not even sure what you were put on this earth to do. You think the woman is the purpose, you know, like and that's where things start to get twisted. I want to get into like some of the ways that maybe to remedy this, because I have some ideas, and I'm sure that you do, of like how maybe we could turn this around, or leave, like, whether it's society at large we can turn it around, or just on an individual level. I want to give a shout out to a few of these comments here before we go down. Red Sparrow is watching from Italy. She is actually part of the Waiting Works community. There's a good girl right there, guys. She's been waiting for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Good military girl.
Where in Italy? I have a brother stationed at Naples.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she was just stationed there. Let's see. Crypto Boogie says that. Oh, he asked how to go. That was a while back. I'm not sure what that was in response to. Let's keep going. She said women don't respect themselves. They're extremely desperate.
It's not. I don't think women are desperate. Women know exactly what their value is, or they inflate their value. I don't think they don't respect themselves, or they choose not to respect themselves because they see the monetary gain they could get from it.
Crypto Boogie asked a question. Or I'm sorry, CHD, my bad. He said, Invincible Extremes Muscle Cars Garage. What about Alpha God? Hector Garcia. Rollo recommended it.
Oh, that's a book. Yeah, Alpha God is the book that Hector Garcia wrote. You know, and that's one I've read a little bit about. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's a good book. You know, it's definitely a good read. I definitely wouldn't say read that over the Bible, you know, but I definitely say read the Bible, then read that.
Mm-hmm. This guy, I don't have a name here. An elder pastor is unfit for the office if they do not understand and teach biblical patriarchy in marriage, as this is essential to understanding our relationship with Christ.
Yeah, and see, biblical that want to talk about solutions.
Yeah,
to this.
It's a good
biblical patriarchy is the solution, in my opinion. Everybody knows the role and understand that, you know, it goes God, Jesus, man, wife, children, dog, cats, you know, like, you know, that's the way it should go. That's the hierarchy. God created a hierarchy for a reason, right? There's hierarchy. you look at it, God said, okay, I'm going to create man, then I'm going to create woman, and then that she's going to be a helpmate, right? A helpmate to a man. All right. And then we see in Timothy, a woman is not supposed to preach, but supposed to be in silent. And she's not supposed to have authority over men. So even outside of a marriage, right, a woman's not supposed to have authority over men. Then we see in Ephesians, right, where it says a woman is supposed to submit to her husband in everything. And a husband's supposed to love his wife, right? So we constantly see this narrative that God has this hierarchy in place and how he wants relationships between man and woman, not just man and wife, but man and woman. We always see this hierarchy in place. What we're having a problem with our society today is that we decided that we're not going to obey God's hierarchy. We're going to believe in egalitarianism and that men and women are equal in all things. And that, just because women can have babies and men can't, doesn't make them less equal. No, they're equal. If anything, it makes women more important because women can have babies. And that is not the way that God wants it to be. So if anything, if we want to correct the problem that we're having in society and in our culture and in marriage, one, remove marriage from the state.
Right. I want to talk about that one.
Yeah.
Because so I heard you say that on the Iron Disciples podcast, and I thought, okay, so let me just tell you where I'm at right now. Because one of the solutions, maybe the big solution that I believe could fix this, is polygyny. Okay, polygyny meaning a man having multiple wives. The reason I believe that is because, first off, let's go back to the beginning. People say, oh, Adam and Eve was the ideal for relationships models. And I'm like, look, the Bible was written by Jews and for Jews, and they didn't even believe that. They were polygynous. Okay, so let's dismiss that. In fact, Jews didn't stop being polygynous till like 1,000 years ago. And it wasn't because the Bible says so. It was because of anti-Semitism. They were living among, foreign nations, and they didn't want to be, they were all monogamous. But if you look at the term romantic, where did that come from? It came from the Roman Empire, because they thought they were so superior because they had monogamous relationships, but it was serial monogamy. It was hopping from one monogamous relationship to another, which is what Paul directly preaches against in the New Testament when he talks about people. I used to think that verse, the deacon must be the husband of one wife. That word one is also used as first in many times throughout the Bible. Husband of first wife, meaning he's preaching against serial monogamy or against divorce, some would say. But if you look, like even Martin Luther, and I had this quote up, I wanted to read it because I've said it before. It's pretty eye-opening for me. He said, if a man wishes to marry more than one wife, he should be asked whether he is satisfied in his conscience that he may do so in accordance with the word of God. In such case, the civil authority has nothing to do with the matter. He starts it off with, I confess that I cannot forbid a person to marry several wives, for it does not contradict the scripture. Man, when I found that, I was like, oh my gosh, here I've been operating for the last 23 years since I met the Lord, that monogamy was the only marriage structure acceptable to God, because that's what I've been taught. When in fact, it was never really in the Bible. Monogamy is never mentioned in the Bible, nor is polygyny, but there are multiple examples of great men of God that had multiple wives. And actually, God commanded it in some cases. I challenge everybody to go back and watch episode 88, the last podcast where I had on Berean Patriot. And we talked about this, where it can't be sin. And we proved that it's not sin because God doesn't regulate sin.
I always look at the context of it, though, right? And I think the context is important when you practice hermeneutics. I think I told you this before. I think the reason why polygyny would be a sin today, because in Romans it says, obey the laws of the land, right? So if the laws prohibit polygyny, then it has to be a sin because God tells us to obey the laws of the land.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about that, because look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In their time, there was a law that you had to bow down and worship this idol or whatever. So I think legislation can't override God's laws, because there is laws that tell you in the Bible, in the Mosaic law, that if your your brother dies and she doesn't have a child, you have to marry her and impregnate her, basically, and you have to continue having sex with your first wife. In Exodus 21, it says if you take a second wife, you have to continue providing and sleeping with the first wife.
Yes.
I mean, it starts to become very clear where, like, a woman is supposed to marry one man for her whole life, right? And that man, if he falls in love or even sleeps with another woman, because it says if somebody sleeps with a virgin, he has to pay the bride price. He has to
Yep.
marry that woman and provide for it. It's, you sleep with her, she's yours. You're taking care of her. I always like to say, like, God put a hymen on a woman for a purpose, because he says, look, you break it, you buy it. It's a seal. So I think it starts to become clear that God was okay with it. And like Martin Luther said, polygyny is better than divorce, and it's better than adultery. It keeps the fathers in the homes. And if you look at even like we're just talking about with the sexual revolution, where you got all these women that have now been sleeping with all these men, who's going to marry them? You think, like, I'm
well, you got Isaiah that also says, Isaiah 4 talks about there's going to be 7 women going to a man saying, please marry me, and keep me from my shame.
Yeah.
Right. There's going to be a time when that happens. And, this is polygamy. I say, I don't have a beef with it. I do see that it is that God has allowed it in times. He actually has even blessed people with it.
Leo.
Right. So for me to be like, oh, well, it's a sin. I'm like, kind of confusing if God's blessing Leah and Rachel, with children because they gave her husband Isaac their housewife or other wives to have kids with. How are you going to say that's sinning? God literally blessed them, right? So I can't say it's a sin, but it's not necessarily the original design that God had. And I think that's, it's like when people say like, more money, more problems.
More wives, more problems.
more pussy, more problems. Okay. Yeah. And we kind of see that with Isaac to a degree, right? Leah is like, wanted, or is it Rachel or Leah? One of them wanted some mandolins, right? And, one of them was complaining like, oh, so you're taking the mandolins my son, brought. And then, I think Leah was like, look, I'll let Isaac come sleep with you tonight, like just chill out. All right.
Him out.
Yeah, she pimps him out. And it's like, I think so I don't necessarily think it's a sin. When it comes to sinning, I think that it is a sin when although you brought up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we also got to understand that was part of the 10 Commandments. And God said, thou shalt not worship anybody but me, right? So that's different than if you notice, like, there's no 10 commandment, and this is where your argument stands. There's no 10 commandment that says thou shalt marry only one wife.
There's never explicitly
It's not
stated.
a 10 commandment. It's not a 10 commandment.
Never in the Bible, not just in the commandments.
Again, Jesus fulfilled the law, right? Jesus fulfilled the 10 commandments. We can't abide by the 10 commandments. That's why we had Jesus come here to the beginning, because we sucked at trying to. God said, look, I'm going to give you 10 rules to follow. And we sucked at following 10 rules. All right. And then Jesus is like, you know what? I know there's going to be this guy named Glenn Lawrence, and he's not going to be able to follow 10 rules. I'm going to give him 2. Love God, love thy neighbor. You do that, you fulfill all 10. And so when you look at marriage and it's like, okay, is polygyny a sin? No, it's not a sin. It's definitely not the way that God intended relationships to be. So if we're trying, and this is where people are like, well, okay, well, polygyny is a sin. Well, no, it's not. Although God said, I intended one man with one woman, right? In the Garden of Eden, you got to look at it from a perfect form. There was no sin. There was no temptation. There was no evilness going on, right?
Right. Yeah.
There was no lust. There's this perfect matrimony, this perfect harmony where God's intention of one man and one woman could flourish, right?
But look at the results of the first monogamous relationship. It was a disaster.
Well,
if we're going to talk about that's an argument people use is, well, they're all the relationships, the polygynists were disasters. I'm look at Adam and Eve. It was we're all still suffering the effects of that.
So it's like I look at it, it's like, okay, this is the way God intended relationships to be,
yeah.
But because of the fall of man, because of Adam and Eve sinned, right? That model, although it's God's ideal for us, we have failed at the ideal.
Yeah.
Right. So then they come up with this other model, right? Polygyny, and they have multiple wives. And God blessed people with multiple wives. He didn't sin. He didn't banish them. They weren't burning in the lake of fire. They never, there was blessings there, right? So one could say, well, God still blessed them. So is it a sin? I say, no, it's not a sin, but it's not God's intended plan, right? And I think that's where we have to differentiate sin versus God's plan, right? And when we see that it's not a sin, but it's definitely not God's plan. And reason why it's not God's plan is because he didn't intend for it to happen that way. But also, he also know that that causes more problems.
Well,
right?
maybe listen. Look at the effects of monogamy right now. Look at what we're dealing with. 56% divorce rate. This is monogamy only. We don't know what the effects of decriminalizing polygyny would be because we've never lived under that. So it's hard to speculate and say what it would be like. But we do know what the results of enforced monogamy are, and they're not good. 56% divorce rate, about 1 million abortions a year. You have rampant fornication, unwillingness to marry because guys don't want to get trapped. Now, look, for me, speaking as a person that's been single for the last 23 years since meeting the Lord, if I would have known that polygyny was accepted by God, that just all I really need to know is it wasn't a sin. Because like you said, I'd get married in a commitment ceremony or a covenant ceremony by a church. I don't need the government involved. That would not be breaking the law, and I would not be breaking God's commands. I would have been married freaking a long time ago, and I wouldn't have to go through what I went through. And what I often say is most men won't go through what I went through because I was extremely lonely, depressed, and horny, all these emotions because I was unwilling to settle and I was unwilling to have sex before marriage. So I was stuck in the middle of these two opposite forces pulling at me, and it sucked. Most men won't do that. What they'll do is they'll just go bang. They'll just go bang girls because they're lonely or they're horny, and then they make babies or, hurt women. Wouldn't it be better just to, marry 2 or 3 of them? To me, what's selfish is what I used to do is sleeping with girls outside of marriage. I'm still a big believer in why waiting works, save sex for marriage. But if you do have sex with that girl, you marry her, even if she is wife number 2 or 3.
Yeah. And here's,
or you marry her first. Let me say that.
I like DC's comment. Most men can't be polygamous because women cost you money and attention, time, and energy. You're going to have to make up millions, and multiple. And he's right. That's the other aspect of it. The average guy today cannot afford 1 wife, let alone 3.
But listen, men will run through a wall for women. So like I tell you, since I've discovered this information, my motivation to make money has never been higher in my life. I am excited. I'm building things. I'm creating. If you think about what the practice of polygyny could do, because first off, you're right. Only a small percentage of men are going to be able to do it, to find, to level up to the point where they're able to, have more than one and the women be on board for it and to pay for them and all the different things. So it's only going to be a small percentage. But I think if a woman knew that her husband could take a second wife, even if he never did, that would change the dynamics of their relationship.
Well, that would be dread.
She's not going to gain 100 pounds, probably let herself go. She's not going to deprive the man of sex when she doesn't, feel like she's going to be thinking he's going to go get another wife. I better give him some pussy when he wants it. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it. I think
you're talking about like installing dread in a relationship.
Competition anxiety.
That's dread. I mean, that's literally dread, right? It's passive dread. It's not overt dread. It's very passive dread. Hey, yeah. I'm in a position to have another wife, Well,
if you just lived in a society where it was legal, and even Rollo talks about competition anxiety, right? It makes women horny. Right. So there is something there. And I'm not even saying I'm instilling it. I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out why God made this part of the plan. If he really had a problem with it somewhere along the lines, he would have said something about it or at least spoke negatively of it. He never even criticized it. If anything, he commanded it in some cases. Like you said, he told David, I gave you your wives. If they weren't enough, I would have given you more if you just asked. He's definitely, and Jesus compared himself to a polygynist in the parable of the 10 virgins. He takes 5 of them into the marriage chamber. And some people say, they're bridesmaids.
God uses the analogy of him as a polygynist when he's talking about Judah and Israel.
100%,
But again, if we're talking about what Jesus said in the beginning, God not created divorce, right? It was not so. Man was supposed to leave his father and mother and join his wife, and the two become one flesh, right? So
But that was
again,
about
it
before.
goes back to God's intended plan, and then how man deviated from God's plan, although it not being a sin.
I
Right?
think it's wasn't the ideal plan. I agree with that, but we could use that argument for nudity. Like we were naked and we should just now be naked because that's the way it was in the beginning. There's definitely
Well, we
things.
didn't know we were naked. That's the difference. Now we know we're naked. So we had this naivety about what's going on. So we didn't really know. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. So I understand how polygyny in your argument is a solution.
Yeah.
I would say, you know what? Before you even get to that, let's just say because I think that if we're talking about realistic, that's a huge leap, right?
Maybe.
To go from where we're at now.
Think about
society.
polyamory. I didn't know what polyamory was 5 years ago. First time I heard the term was about 5 years ago. Now it's rampant. People are more open to these non-monogamous relationship styles than they've ever been before. And I'm trying to think about the magnitude of the problem that we're discussing with men not wanting to get married is so big. How are you going to fix that? In my mind, if you could get to the point where you decriminalize polygyny, look, if you don't want to participate, don't. Nobody's going to force you to get married like as a second or third wife. But if you could decriminalize it, that would be a way to take a mop to the cesspool and start to get some of it up. Because what happens is the alternative to guys like Andrew Tate or your buddy Justin Waller is so far from a Christian standpoint. If you're like, okay, well, is there anything I can do kind of like that, but still be a good Christian? No, there's nothing. You got to be like Joel Osteen or Ned Flanders or something. And they go, I can't do it. Screw it. I'll just go out and bang a bunch like Justin does. Or I don't know what Justin's situation is, but I think if you were to be able to say, look, there's a way to do this. He's regulated it and outlined it. Here it is. I think more men would sign up for marriage, or even if they knew they might be able to take a second wife down the road, because they wouldn't feel like they're going to get trapped.
Oh, I think even then, the way that the current system is, no, men would not sign up for marriage. Right now, you get married, right? And you're going to lose half your shit to one wife. Now you have 4. Now you're going to have no shit because if they all divorce you, they all take your shit. So no, that's not the first step in the solution. The first step in the solution is removing marriage from the state. It was always intended to be, in the United States at least, it was always a covenant between God and a man and a woman, right? So that's a religious ceremony. It's a religious practice. I don't think if you're a non-Christian, why even get married? There's no point. You don't even believe in God. So just don't get married. What's the benefits of getting married if you're a non-Christian? Tax incentives?
Right.
Just make more money then, right? So then you don't have to worry about it. But if you're a Christian, I think the first thing that we should do is remove marriage from the state. That means, guess what? Alimony, gone. Because the church cannot enforce alimony, right? Child support, gone. Because, in the biblical times, and even up into, I think it was like the early 1900s, men were awarded custody of the children, not women. So let's go back to that. Let's just take responsibility away from women because they don't want to be responsible or accountable, period. So they don't want to be responsible for the children. They still want you to pay. So then if you have to pay, then guess what? Shouldn't you have the children?
Right.
So then let's just remove the state, the government from marriage altogether, and let's go back to a covenant marriage. I guarantee you, if it was nothing but covenant marriage, less women would want to get married because there's no safety net.
Well, let me ask you a question, because this is something I've been thinking about, especially as I've been considering polygyny, is can you do a covenant ceremony in the eyes of God at a church by a pastor or whatever, and still give the women some kind of protection? Because I love what you said, actually. Let me say this. In the Iron Disciples podcast, you're like, why are we putting our faith in the government as Christians? And that's 100% spot on, because if you listen to what Paul says, we're not even supposed to take each other to court. So like, if you're a Christian, why are you putting your faith in the government in your marriage? Because believers aren't even supposed to sue each other. Paul is very clear about that. He's like, it's better to get taken advantage of than take your brother or sister to court. So can you do a covenant ceremony in the eyes of God at a church or by a pastor, whatever, but still sign some kind of like prenup so that they get some like to know like, hey, if we make a bunch of money, you're still going to get half. I'm not because here I don't want to break the law, but I'm pretty sure that God's calling me to this polygyny thing. So I want to be.
So I think like you could do this. You could set up a trust,
Okay.
or you could set up like a prenup and be like, hey, if in a contract could be a civil matter, and has nothing, because that's what contract law is, a civil matter, right? Not criminal, it's civil. So you could say, hey, you know what? Here's this prenup. If for whatever reason, we get divorced, depending on the circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's infidelity or abuse or something along those lines, they don't get shit.
Right.
Woman, you cheated on me.
Right.
You don't get nothing.
Yep.
But so I think there's ways to set it up. You can set up a trust, right? And be like, hey, here's $20,000 in this trust or $40,000 in this trust. You're only gonna get this trust if we divorce for any other reasons other than infidelity or abandonment or abuse, right? So let's say he becomes a drug addict and she wants out. Okay, she could leave and she could get that $40,000 to help her start her life, right? Or let's say she becomes a harlot and she becomes an OnlyFans whore, right? He could be like, all right, I'm done with you. You don't get anything. But what we need to do is take it out of the court system, which is 100% against men. Now, even James Sexton, who is a very prominent divorce lawyer for over 20 years, and I had him, me and Rollo had him on Rule 0, and he was saying, like, guys, I don't understand why guys are getting married. It's not worth it for you.
Yeah.
And so there's ways that you could set it up to where you could create a trust, right? Or this is what I think, and this is my wife brought this up, is like, why don't we have the dowry system back, right? Or the bride price. Remember, there was a bride price.
You had to pay the father. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's establish this bride price, right? And say like, this bride, before you can marry this woman, you have to have an account for her for like, $50,000. And that has to be secured for her before you get married. So then now it gives guys the incentive to make more money, right? They want to get married. They want to have sex. They want this woman as their wife. So he's busting his ass to make that money. He puts that in a secure account. Okay. If anything happens, she has this bride price that she could live off of, or that she could start her new life with. That right there, you could create something. Now, if you want to have multiple wives, then you're going to pay multiple bride prices. And I really hope you have over $200,000 to put it in there, because that's what it's probably going to cost, $50,000 for each one. That's going to be $200,000, so it's like, there's ways to do it and just remove marriage out of the church. But again, or remove the church or marriage from the state. But right there, let me tell you something. Women have more faith in the state than they do in God.
100%. I would say men too, though, in the church. Same.
No, men don't. There's no faith in the state. You have no faith in the state.
Actually, yeah, you're right.
So if you got divorced,
as far as when you're talking about marriage, yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So when they get married, women, why? You really want to test a woman? If you really want to test a woman and see if she's really for you, then you tell her, I want to get married, but I only want a covenantal marriage. I don't want to get married with the state. See what her response is. If she's like, no, I really want to just get married to state, blah, blah, blah. She's already thinking about security. She's thinking about security, and she wants security more than she wants the marriage.
I see. I sympathize with women. I'm talking to a girl now, actually, and we've talked about this very thing. And I sympathize with it because they do want security. That is hardwired into them. Men want sex, women want security. So how can you give them the security without having the state involved? I guess it goes back to what you said, where there's some kind of contract or something written.
Yeah, well, the bride price, remember, the bride price was paid to the family. So it was like you pay it to the father. Like, here, future dad-in-law, here's this money for the bride price. Now, the parents, this is why we remove parents from marriage anyways. Before, dad had a say-so.
He had the say-so.
Remember that song, Why you gotta be so rude? You know, the guy is like trying to go up to the door to like ask the dad's, for the marriage, and he's like, no.
Yeah.
And he's like, and the dad's saying, you're not level enough. You're not at the status that I want you to be. You're not a man in my eyes that's worthy of my daughter's hand.
Right.
We don't have that anymore.
No. And women are actually
just like, oh, well, she wants to marry Joe Blow, the crackhead. That's fine. That's what her heart is. Let's let her do that. And it's like, okay, but now women don't make good decisions. We already know that.
They're actually attracted to the bad boys.
I just did a video that women don't want good guys.
They don't.
They want the bad boys
that they can
right,
change.
And then they want to get ran through the bad boys, and then they want the safe guy.
Right.
The guy that's not going to hold them accountable, the guy that's going to let them walk all over them, the guy that's going to let them do whatever, is going to be the happy wife, happy life, that's going to defer authority to her, that's going to only see things through her way. That's what they want. But the good guy, they overlook the good guy because the good guy is good, not just to him, but to everyone around him. But was he good to, you ever seen the movie The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Yeah, you talked about the lion, right, being safe.
Yeah, Aslan is not safe. He's a lion.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, and Aslan's supposed to represent Jesus in the movie, right? Jesus is not safe for Satan, is he?
Right.
Jesus is not safe for Satan. He's coming to kick Satan's ass. So if Jesus is not safe for Satan, it's safe to say that Jesus is not safe for everybody. He's not. He even talks about, I'm coming with a sword and I'm dividing families. I'm separating mothers and sons and fathers and daughters. He's not safe, but he's good. And women don't want a good guy. They want a safe guy after they've been ran through by the bad boys. And then now you wonder why marriage is not working right, because guess what? The safe guy and the bad boy both fail them.
Yeah, right. That's true. I was watching a Tate interview. I forget who he was on with, but he was talking. I think it was when he was on with that Brittany Renner girl. And he was like, look, when, he said, when a man's young, he's like, he's 20 years old. He ain't got no money. He can't fuck. He's like, no girls are giving him attention. When he's 25, like same thing. Basically talks about all the way up until he's like in his 30s. And he finally starts getting some attention. And then the 30-year-old women want to tell him, you should be monogamous and settle down. He was like, bitch, you weren't. When you were in my place in your life, when you were 20 and you had all the options, you're out screwing every different guy, all the athletes and the bad boys and on the yacht and whatever. He's like, you weren't doing it. And now they expect men. They try to shame men and to be a man. You should be mature. Like, what were you doing when you had all these options? Not condoning it.
It's funny that women say that men need to man up. Women don't even know how to be a man to begin with.
Right.
So how they could tell us to man up? No, women up. Like I think guys need to have a higher standard for women. And I think that's part of the problem why marriages fail. Men don't have a higher standard for women. The standard is she's cute, she looks good, and she touched my pee-pee. That's the standard. That's the only threshold that they have.
Yeah.
Her being a submissive wife, a good mother to your children, a good homekeeper, a woman of wise words, all that's like bonus to guys, right? Oh, she does, but the threshold for women is she's hot and she touched my pee-pee. Like women are allowed to have this ridiculous standard for guys. You have to have six-pack abs, you have 6 figures in your bank account. You have this thing, you have to be that, you have to have this, you have to provide me this, you have to provide me that. And it's like, okay, cool. Ladies, guess what? You got to be submissive. You can't be a whore. All right. You have to be agreeable. You have to be pleasant to be around. You can't be malicious. You can't be a manipulative woman, right? That's what guys are saying. But women are like, how dare you hold this standard to me?
Right.
I touched your pee-pee. That should be good enough. And guys are like, you're right. I like my pee-pee being touched, And so guys, we kind of sabotage ourselves in this state where it's like we allow women we lower the standard and threshold for women, but then get mad at women when they don't meet our threshold.
Right.
Well, you never held them to a standard to begin with. Now you want to hold them to a standard in marriage?
Yeah.
You weren't holding them to that standard while you were dating.
Right.
And it's almost like it's a very deceitful way that guys do it, thinking that, okay, once you get married, I'm going to hold her to the standard. You should be holding that girl to the standard from the beginning.
Right. No, that's good. Got a super chat here from Crypto Boogie. Thanks again for those, Crypto Boogie. He said that would be a dope ass short clip to what Dr. James Dobson said and your response. Let's keep going. We'll take a few comments here. What does TFM stand for? Do you know? CG said.
Oh no, I can hear TFM right now. I don't know.
Pearl says women shouldn't vote. I had actually Elliot Halse on my podcast. I think he was 2 episodes ago, and he that's something that he has notoriously said, is that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. You ever
Turfling Monkey, that's who it is. Yeah. And I agree, women shouldn't vote. Again, I don't think women should be elected in office. Mm-hmm. They're not supposed to have authority over men. Any woman that's in office, public office, has authority over men. Don't think a woman should have authority over men, period. You know, I don't think that, women should vote. They don't have to. They're not. See, as a guy, the Selective Service told me when I was 18 that if I didn't sign up for the Selective Service, I could face 5 years imprisonment and a $200,000 fine. That's a threat. That means I have to have skin in the game, right? And I have to be willing to serve my country and die for it. Women don't have the Selective Service. They don't have to have skin in the game. So therefore, they shouldn't have the right to vote.
Right.
And you have to remember, the reason why they gave women the right to vote was to divide the family.
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up, because when you talk about the laws, the family court laws, and even like women being rewarded with more money, welfare if they have kids outside of wedlock, you start to wonder if this is malicious, right? Like, is this a plan? Do you think it's malicious? Do you think that they have good intentions, or are they really trying to destroy the nuclear family? Because I can't help but think, if you have, even going back to the polygyny thing, if you have a man in the home and he's got 2 or 3 wives, he's got all his kids there that he's raising, he's making a lot of money, he's got all these incomes coming into one house, he feels like a freaking king when he comes home because he's got 3 wives. Like, that's a hard man to deal with. Like, if he disagrees with something that the powers that be is doing, and you get enough of those men in a land, that could start a revolution. What they'd rather have is a bunch of tired men. They ain't getting no pussy. They're come home, they're just beat down by the world, and they have no energy to fight anymore. Like, so, or just a bunch of single parent homes, because then you got that's very easy to control.
Yeah, when the way that they did it is like, okay, it is really like, you think about it, it's like a way to strip men of authority, right? Let's look at it from a biblical sense, right? That if God says in the Bible, or if Paul writes in the Bible, women are not supposed to have authority over men, then giving a woman a right to vote is giving her authority over men.
Because she can elect a man?
She could elect whoever.
Right.
She could elect a woman.
Right, yeah.
So if we're doing that, right, then we're being disobedient from what God called us to do, right? So look what's happened ever since women have had the right to vote. We're in a whole bunch of debt. We have more people on welfare, all right? We have more broken homes, Like there's a lot of things that have been the consequence. You know what? If women didn't have a right to vote, we wouldn't have a Democratic president for the last 50 years.
That's 100%.
Obama wouldn't have had his 2 terms.
I hang a lot of what's going on in the country on him, man, with all this division and all this, trans stuff and things that they're pushing down the kids' throats in the schools and everything else. He's definitely responsible for a lot of this.
But you know what? this is what I say. It was God's plan. God's will. God, remember, the Bible says God puts the leaders above us.
Yeah.
He elects them. So for whatever reason, God needed Obama or wanted Obama to be the president.
Yeah.
I may not understand it.
Yeah.
But God knew. And he has a plan for it. And the same reason, same thing with they have like Biden. Biden is half dead. I don't know why he's in president.
Yeah.
But God has a plan for it.
Yeah.
So although I may disagree with these presidents, adamantly, it's not my plan, it's God's plan.
Right.
So we have to go back to saying, okay, God, let thy will be done. Too often we are like, okay, Lord, I want this to happen. I want this to happen. Rarely do we ever say, hey, God, what do you want to happen?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, if I wasn't a Christian, I'd be scared right now because the way the world's going, if I didn't realize that God is in control, regardless of the way it looks sometimes, I'd be pretty afraid.
I mean, there's times where I'm terrified with this. I'm terrified with a lot of the things. I don't think it's like the way that, unless you are a Christian and able to homeschool your kids and to have full control over your kids, I don't think you should have kids.
Yeah.
If you're not in a position to do that.
Yeah.
Because if you send your kids to public schools, you're sending them into an indoctrination camp. And the schools are designed to alienate kids from their families, right? And basically, they're not your kids once they get to the school system. They're their kids. You're just responsible for them.
Yeah.
And what is responsibility without authority? It's slavery.
Right. Just the last two comments I put up on the screen, basically the one before that said that men are only as promiscuous as women will let them be, almost kind of like hanging this responsibility on women. And there is some truth in that. And I've got pushback from women because they're like, you make it seem like it's all women's fault. And I'm like, no, I don't. But to try to convince men to stop trying to have sex with women is an uphill battle. You're never going to get it through. I compared it to, if a city was giving out welfare checks to all their inhabitants and everybody was not going to work because they were getting the free money. Would you go to the people and ask them to stop taking the money, or would you go to the government and say, stop giving out the free money, dummy? You go to the government because the people are never going to stop taking the free money if it's being given out. So women do have a certain level of responsibility. Of course, yes, if men stop trying, which will never happen, and the problem would be fixed. But this woman says, I know my worth, and that's why I'm still single, because I won't sleep around. So that's really the problem, because the last person said, well, if women stop giving it out, then men, they can only be as promiscuous as women will allow. And eventually, and like Tate says, they would get married. This woman says, I'm waiting and I can't find a husband because I won't sleep around. It's like, how do you fix that?
Well, it's like, shout out to George Bruno. Shout out to him. He's in the chat.
Okay.
Hey, George, did you give me your email? Is that the email that you wanted me to email you on? If so, let me know. I haven't reached out to you yet because I wasn't sure if it was you or not. When it comes, I think we have been conditioned, women have conditioned men to expect sex from them, right? For the littlest things. Okay, George, I'll email you. It's like, oh, we take them out to dinner. We expect the sex because she gives it up, right? Women don't value their own sexual chastity anymore. And since they don't value their sexual chastity, how can you expect men to respect your sexual chastity? Right? And she's saying, I know my worth. That's why I'm single, because I won't sleep around. That's great. But then also you must not be attracting the guys that actually value your worth.
Yeah, that's a great point. Stefan Speaks said the same thing. He said, it's not a matter of men not being unwilling to wait. Men wait for things that they want bad enough all the time. He says, you have to be worth waiting for. He says, if Beyonce came out, tomorrow, she was divorced from Jay-Z, and she says, I'm single and I'm waiting to have sex until marriage, she'd have a line down the block, right? Because men would be like, they would see her as worth waiting for. So that really is the game, is help making men see that you are someone worth waiting for, whether that's the way you look, the way you carry yourself, or whatever. But I think what happens too is, because women are hypergamous, they'll set their sights on guys that are probably above their sexual market value. So they're delusional. They'll see a guy that's maybe his status is higher than theirs or whatever it is, and they'll sleep with him thinking that they might get the commitment if he likes the pussy enough. And so they have hope. And then, but really he's got like 4 or 5 of them on rotation. They don't know. They're trying to catch him on the Facebook groups. Are we dating the same guy? Right. That every city has these things. And the guy is just taking it because women are giving it out. And eventually what happens is at some point they hit the wall, as Rollo calls it. And then they start getting real about what is their real equal in the sexual marketplace now. And then they marry the safe guy, which is who maybe they should have married in the first place. But because of that hypergamous nature, they're out trying to catch a person that they really have no chance of getting.
Yeah. And it's like, it's funny that like a lot of women, and I don't know Lisa Jane, and I don't know how old she is, but it's like most women, when they hit like 30, they're like, I know my worth now. And I'm not saying this is her. I'm staying single and I won't sleep around. But you did in your 20s.
Right.
You hold out in your 20s, and now all of a sudden you know your worth. Well, and I'm not saying this is Lisa, but I don't think women know their worth. They devalue themselves if they slept around a lot in their younger years, and then now they're saying, I'm a born again Christian. I'm not going to sleep around. I'm gonna hold out for the good guy. Well, you kind of devalue yourself already. You already kind of like you've already devalued your worth, and you're kind of inflating your worth more than it is. Yeah. But I'm not that woman anymore. It doesn't matter. You were that woman.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's responsibility to capitalize on their sexual market value when it's at its peak, right? So, like if you're selling a house, you're going to sell it when you can get the most money for it. When can women demand the highest price? Is probably in their early 20s. That's when they have to do it. Now, a lot of women are not. They're in that hoe phase early. Not to say that Lisa is or anybody else in this chat, for all I know, but that is probably the majority. Is they're out giving it away, and then you're right. As they start to get older, and then the fear creeps in because now there's a new crop of 20-year-olds out there getting most of the attention. Then all of a sudden they want to, basically try to find that safe, but still high value man, you can't
have both, right? Women can't have both. You can't have a guy that's safe, because a safe guy is not necessarily a good guy. You can't have a guy that's safe and attractive enough for you to want to, have that desire for, right? It's kind of like it's competing, and it's like, a woman's value in for a man is her sexuality and the ability to produce offspring. That's really only what a man really expects from a woman, right? To be submissive and to be a pleasant wife and to bring offspring, right? But if you gave your vagina out to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that came around, there's no value there. You have devalued. But guys have to understand that. I say the same thing for guys too, without dick control. If you just like bang everybody, right? And you're letting everybody, if you have 10 baby mamas and you have 12 kids, right? Your offspring is no value. You didn't say this woman is, valuable. Like, this is the woman I want to have my kids with. You said, no, I want to just have kids with everybody. And I think that's a problem too, And when it comes to relationships, we need to realize that there is a hierarchy and there's an order and there's a consequence. And although the consequences may appear differently, there's still a consequence. Just because you are a guy and you were extremely promiscuous, you have tons of bodies underneath your belt, doesn't mean that you don't have to answer for God for all the fornication that you did. Right? And same thing with the women. Like, just because you think that, you didn't have kids, you're on the pill and you slept around and you deserve a good guy, doesn't mean you're going to get that, and doesn't mean that you still don't have to answer to God for the fornication that you did.
Yeah.
Right? We all have to live with our consequences. And the reality is that men are conditioned to live with consequences, but women aren't.
Right.
And we even see that in marriages, right? When a woman, I know there's a woman when she did some egregious stuff to her ex-husband and he left her, right? And she's like, I didn't even think that it was bad enough. I don't know why you would leave, you know. And he's like, these are the consequences of your actions. The consequences of your actions is I depart from you.
I love this comment. Forrest Gump is an example of the safe guy. Yeah, after Jenny went out and banged everybody, she comes back to Forrest.
Do you know women romanticize over Forrest? Women always say that they want a guy like Forrest Gump. Oh, he's so sweet. He's so forgiving. He's so loving. You know, they want a Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is a horror movie for men.
This guy said, Hank Hill from King of the Hill is a cartoon version of a Beta Bucks dude in the TradCon.
Absolutely.
So let's talk really quick about this 80-20 thing, because I think it's worth mentioning. So like if 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men, the alphas, how is that impacting the majority of men? Because they're being pushed out of the sexual marketplace.
It's not so much, it's 80% of the men are invisible to women.
Yeah.
The real number is women only want to sleep with about 4.5% of men in the sexual marketplace. Now, that doesn't mean that the rest of the 5.5 are not getting laid. It's that the 4.5% of men are the men that women are pursuing. Right? These are guys that they don't got to do anything. Women are just throwing their panties at them.
Right.
Right? But the rest of the 15.5% of men are the ones that are pursuing women that happen to get laid. So women really only desire the top 4.5 of men on the sexual marketplace.
Where'd you get those numbers at?
Rollo.
Okay. Well, it's good. So the 80% are invisible. Now that's what I want to talk about, because that, like, I wonder how that plays out, because the frustration and that it's got to be terrible for society.
Well, you got to look at historically, most men did not procreate. I think 80% of women procreated in history, but only 40% of men have.
Really?
So most men, the 80-20 rule has always been a thing. You know, most men will not reproduce.
Well, let me ask you this. Was it a thing, though? Because before the sexual revolution, when it was par for the course to, you know, wait until marriage, or maybe you slept with somebody and then you married that person, that was probably the majority of people were either waiting until marriage or marrying the first person that they slept with. Then I think the numbers balance out, because there's a relatively same amount of men and women. And if monogamy was the standard, then most men are able to find a wife of equal, you know, they're equal in the sexual marketplace. But now, because there's no stigma around having sex outside of marriage for women, they are sleeping with these guys that they have no chance of getting, and they're these few, you know, 5%, 20%, whatever the number is, of alphas are gobbling it up. They're capitalizing all these women not having any standards in that area, and that pushes, because that, to me, it feels like this problem is relatively recent. Like it wasn't something that happened before the 60s. I can't imagine.
Do you ever remember the phrase like that? You're the milkman's baby.
Yeah, or the mailman.
Or the mailman's baby.
Yeah,
it was going on back then too.
Yeah,
you know. So women will find a way to sleep with the alpha, even if they're with a beta.
Yeah.
You know, women will be like, why do you think, contraceptions are such a big deal? Why do you think women support abortion? Is it because they don't want to have the child with the beta guy. They don't want to have a child with the guy that's not of value.
Yeah.
So, and you look at history, right? Another reason why most men did not reproduce is most men died. They went to war, even before the 60s. Most men went to war and they died, So a lot of men did not reproduce just because they didn't get the opportunity to reproduce.
Right.
Women always have the opportunity to reproduce. So, the problem is, again, when I think about relationships and marriage, is that men tend not to have standards for women. I mean, I have a friend that tell me I will fuck the biggest, fattest, ugliest chick there is, and I'll bang the hottest chick there is. I will bang them the same, and I'm just sitting there like, dude, you have no standards. But it's like we men tend not to have standards, but women have standards, and we have accepted that women have standards, and that's okay. Women should have standards, but men need to have standards too.
Yeah.
Men need to have standards that are more than just she's pretty and she touched my pee-pee.
Yeah. I think we need a fear of God too. That for me, that was the big thing that helped me have standards.
Well, you think about it, like God says, like, hey, and not everybody's getting into heaven.
Yeah.
Like the path is narrow. So if God has a threshold in who his bride is going to be, shouldn't you have a threshold on who your bride is going to be?
Yeah, of course.
And shouldn't that threshold be a lot more than a woman touching your pee-pee?
Yeah.
I mean, you could get your pee-pee touched. It's not that hard. You could go down to the bunny ranch in Nevada, and they'll pay. You could pay somebody to touch your pee-pee. So the threshold of pee-pee touching should not be, the standard for a wife. Like that should be, part of it, but not the standard.
Yeah, agreed.
So if God has a standard for his bride, then men need to have a standard for their bride. If God says, my standard for my bride is that she's submissive and that she is respectful and she is, she loves her family and she loves her children, and that she strives to be a Proverbs 31 woman, that should be the standard. The pee-pee touching is extra. Let's just put the standard, the pee-pee touching is a benefit,
The issue is we live in America and they're surrounded by media and all the influences. It's almost like you'd have to go overseas. And even like I had Rich Cooper on my podcast. And he was talking about these passport bros. Do you know who they are?
Oh yeah, no. I have a split understanding. Like I have like two different parts of passport bros. I'm cool with one part. I'm not cool with the other part. And people are like, oh, we just need to go over to another country and find a woman. Cool. Stay there. Don't bring her back.
Right.
You bring her back here, she's going to turn just into an American woman because she's going to become Americanized, and you're not going to like that.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible that your frame is so strong that you marry a submissive woman and you keep her that way, even in spite of all? Because I feel like it is. Well,
it's almost like, if your problem is American women, running away from your problem doesn't fix the solution.
Well,
You suck with women. If you suck with women here, you're going to suck with women over there. It's just going to be in a different manner. So it's like you ever played Madden, like the video game Madden, right? Now, I'm good at Madden. I like playing on pro mode, or expert mode, right? I'm playing hard because I want to be good at it. I want to be the best at it, right? So I'm not playing on easy mode. And a lot of times what guys do is they'll fly overseas, they'll marry a woman overseas, and like, I got her. Well, you don't think women have overseas game too? There's women game dudes overseas. They're like, oh yeah, I love you. You American. You're my everything. I take care of you. I love you long time. You bring them to the States. They get that green card. They're like, deuces. I got paid out. I'm a U.S. citizen now. You can't do anything to me, right? There is game. Women are not dumb. So my thing is like, if you're going to be a passport bro, move to that country that woman is, because what's keeping her the traditional way that you like is the culture she's surrounded by, and stay in that culture.
Yeah, well, let me say this, because when I brought that, I kind of switched topics on you without telling you. I was talking about passport bros, but I'm like, so I've dated women, some great women, and I've never had an issue with them following my lead. I've never been broken up with, except one time when she caught me cheating red-handed. But I've never had a problem with just having women follow my lead and basically wearing the pants, for lack of a better term. Even some girls that were super tough bitches when I first met them, they were used to walking on guys, and it was a wrestling match in the beginning. It took a lot of shit tests that I had to pass. I had to be willing to push my chips in multiple times and be willing to lose it, because I'm like, I'm just not going to tolerate this behavior. Either she's going to be the way I want her to be, or we're going to break up, but I will not put up with this shit. So I had to do that multiple times. Eventually they kind of broke, for lack of a better term, and became a really good girlfriend. And so I wonder if it's not possible, even in spite of living in America and with all the media and negative influences, that your frame is so good, you have such a good ego and backbone, that you can keep women in check even in the midst of it, because I feel like you can.
Well, see, I think if your frame is solid and bulletproof, then yeah. And it's funny, CF says women will follow your lead if they feel safe with you. If they don't feel safe with you, they won't follow your lead. Men are not supposed to be safe, but we're supposed to be good, not safe.
They like a little danger, actually.
Exactly. And being good doesn't make you safe. It makes you good. Now, I think what she means by, and see, this is a lot of things. A lot of times we think that safe and good are the same, and they're not the same. Like I like. You ever heard of Mad Dog Maddox?
No.
All right, he was like, I think, President Trump's Secretary of State.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I love what he said. He's like, be nice to everybody, but have a plan to kill everybody. Like, he's nice, he's safe, right? If you're good, he's good, but if you step out of line, you're gonna feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like, safety is not obtainable without it being, avoiding consequence.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with what women want. But back to your point about like passport bros, you can, as you said, like, you leveled up, you didn't have a problem with women in your frame here in America. You can have a bulletproof frame. The hierarchy, or the way that relationships work, or the equity of relationships, or not equity, but the power of relationship is, whoever doesn't need the relationship the most has the most power.
Always.
So if the guy is constantly defaulting to her and constantly investing in her and put his whole life on her satisfaction and her happiness, right? Then he needs the relationship more than she does.
Yep.
So it's like, when you have a solid frame, what you're saying is like, hey, I love this relationship. I would love for us to have a flourishing relationship, but I don't need it.
Yes.
If you step out of line, I'm not going to die for that. It's not going to be the death of me. I will continue.
They love it.
I wish you could still be here, but according to your behavior will, determine your place in this relationship.
Yeah. And it's not that you don't love them. This is what I tell. I've had this conversation. They're like, you act like you could just lose me so easily. And I'm like, no, I just have standards. I'm not going to put up with certain things. So it's exactly, it all has to do with fear. If you're not afraid, you can't be afraid and have good, strong frame. You have to
see, that's where safe comes in. Like, safe means the absence of fear, right? Because you're safe. I'm not afraid that this is going to happen. I'm safe. And that's why I say that men should not be safe. They should be good, right? People say that the Bible says you're supposed to have a fear of God, right? Well, if, again, God is the representation of a husband, Jesus' representation of a husband, then you should have that same, to a degree, that fear with your husband. And not and the fear is not like, oh, I'm scared of him. It's reverence.
Right.
I don't want to offend him. I don't want to upset him. I don't want to, do anything that's going to remove him from my presence. Right?
Yeah.
But what we see is that actually flipped in reverse. What we see today is we see that women love your husbands, and we see men submit and respect to your wives. That's what we see. We see what God's word says flip backwards. It's men love your wives, and women submit and respect to your husbands, right? We don't see that. We see the reverse, right? And this is what I like to point out. It's hilarious. Every woman that hurt your feelings, did she tell you she loved you? Every woman that did something bad that caused a relationship to end, did she tell you she loved you?
I would say, yeah.
Any person that respected you but didn't love you, did they mess with you?
Hold on, ask me that again.
So let me rephrase it. I don't love my boss. I respect him. Right?
Right.
I'm able to obey my boss because out of respect.
Right.
And submission. But I don't love my boss. My enemies respect me. Right? And they don't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
So when women say, oh, I love my husband, that's great. You should. But do you respect him?
Yeah.
All the people that have ever hurt you were people that said they loved you.
Right.
But the people that respected you, they didn't hurt you. Why do you think God said men love your wives and wives respect your husbands? It's one of the same coin. It's the opposite side of the same coin. Men need respect and women need to be loved.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But what we tend to do is we tend to see men loving their wives, or men respecting their wives, deferring their authority to their wives, submitting to their wives' standard and will, and we don't see relationships working out.
Yeah, it's good. I think the churches aren't teaching it, man. You're one of the few people that are talking about this stuff from a Christian's perspective, which is why I want to get you on the show. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been 2 hours. I appreciate you giving me your time, man. I know it's valuable. I know you got to get to the studio.
Yeah, we got Rolo, we got Myron and Fresh coming in. We got a busy week today, but I'm glad I was able to hop on with you this morning.
Nah, man, I've been wanting to do this. Thank you. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on my channel at Glenn Lawrence Presents. You can find me on Instagram at Glenn_Lawrence_Presents. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Glenn Lawrence. Yeah, you can find me there. If you want some one-on-one coaching, I offer that too. Just hit me up. I'll give you some coaching insight. Or you can find me on a chat with the Iron Disciples or Rob here. We're going to be doing a lot more work together. I think it's going to be fun. Maybe even getting like a small mini conference somewhere together and have us talking about these things.
You're going to laugh, but I think so. I've been connected with this organization called Biblical Families. Everybody can check them out if they have any interest in learning more about polygyny. Even if you just want to try to dispute it, go to their website. Ton of resources there. biblicalfamilies.org. They're having a retreat in January in Vegas.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, I've never actually met these people. I've talked to them several times, but I may end up flying out there. So I'd love to meet you in person if that happens.
Yeah. If you come out here, let me know. I'll come. I'll tag along with you.
Yeah. Don't tell your wife though. She'll be like, you ain't hanging out with that motherfucker. Like, no, but that would be amazing, man. It would be really cool.
For sure.
Cool. Well, I'll put all the links that Glenn just mentioned in the show notes. I just really want to quickly plug, if you're a man out there and you're watching, go join the Unplugged Christian Alphas Facebook group. I just started this about a month or two ago. It's really just guys like Glenn. We're sifting through the information from the manosphere from a Christian's perspective. And that's really was the goal in starting the group. You can actually go to unpluggedchristian.com. It'll take you directly to the Facebook group. It's free to join. Just answer a couple questions. And if you're a lady out there or a man, both, if you're waiting to have sex until marriage, join the Waiting Works community on Facebook. It's a bunch of people that are looking for love before sex. And there's about 4,000 people in that group supporting each other. So that's also free to join. So, man, hey, thanks again, Glenn. Awesome rapping with you. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom.
No problem. Thank you. You have a good day.
Okay, brother. All right. I'll talk to you soon.